Hey everyone, welcome back to their hardware news recap of the week. In this one, we'll be talking about backwards motherboard form factors, where ASUS is trying to make cables on the backside of the board a thing. It makes sense for better cable management, but case compatibility is a problem. This has been tried before, but ASUS is now jumping in on it. Additionally, some leaks about 4060s or 4060 Ti's where there's an FE cooler floating around that makes it look like a more normal-sized video card with a still not normal-sized video card price. There are some massive cell phone vulnerabilities, and our favorite story, the Mega Gamer. It's a new video card. It's not quite Giga Gamer yet. That's the next evolution. But Maxsun is making the new Mega Gamer 5-fan GPU. Before that, this video is brought to you by Thermaltake and their new Series 500TG ARGB mid-tower case. The Thermaltake Series case is perforated all on the front panel and the power supply shroud, including perforations on the cable side of the case for further ventilation to the PSU and hard drive chamber of the case. A separate access door for hard drives makes the case easy to work with for 3.5-inch storage, or the door can be swapped out for a separate LCD panel kit that displays system information. Other features include a GPU support kit, vertical mounting, and a hinged glass panel. Learn more at the link in the description below. First up, some quick GN things. So I was just over in Taiwan for 10 days. I was working on a few different things. So one of them was a developing story we're working on that is, it's really interesting. It's kind of like an artesian builds thing, but I can't say more than that right now. And we won't be able to finalize all of the reporting and research until probably June or July. So anyway, that's pretty far out. And that's all I could say right now, but it involved some travel to do some collection of information. So anyway, that'll be fun. And otherwise, we had completely uninterrupted publishing during that time, which is a milestone for us. We've never had that where I can leave for a trip, and we normally have to produce content on that trip in order to keep publishing during the trip. But this time, the team was able to put everything together before I left, and we could just publish every couple days. So that was really cool. There's really no reason anyone would have known I was even over there because I didn't talk about it beforehand, except a couple of you spotted me. One guy in particular, I asked him for some directions, and he was like, are you gamers? And I said, yes, I am gamers. We took a photo, and then everybody in the industry apparently found that photo on Facebook or something because I started getting hit up by everyone. And I was like, man, the guy had to see me walking away from a Burger King in Taiwan so I could fulfill the stereotype of being an American eating Burger King in Taiwan. He couldn't have spotted me anywhere else. It had to be there. Anyway, there's some really cool stories we have coming up on that. We also have factory tours coming up. We'll be publishing over the next couple of weeks, so check back for all that. And then final note here for the GN section, our Modmats were just freshly restocked. They are in stock and shipping now. If you have a back order, it'll be going out in the next couple weeks or so. And if you place a new order, it will be going out alongside those. They ship an order, but basically they're shipping immediately now. That includes the large Volt Modmats, which have been wildly popular. We have sold more Volt Modmats than any other Modmat in the history of the designs. We also just restocked our original medium Modmats. We were planning on discontinuing these a while ago, but we had so many people requesting them that we said, you know, let's do one more run for everybody. So this is your last chance to get these particular designs of the medium version 1, and they are on store.gamersnexus.net if you want to grab one. A lot of people really wanted one, and they didn't get a chance to grab this specific design. I think people liked the video card anatomy layout the most. So it's got some descriptions of Makhnovets, GPU, VRM components, stuff like that. So anyway, it's up on the store. They're shipping now, and it helps us out a lot with our continued reporting and traveling reporting. Okay, let's move on to the first story. This one. So backwards motherboards with cables that are routed through the backside. Makes a ton of sense from a cable management perspective. ASUS is trying to bring this to market. The first one they're starting with is the Tough Gaming B760M-BTF Wi-Fi D4. D4 being DDR4. This is micro ATX, so you'd have a hard time fitting it into many cases anyway, though, due to the unique nature of it. And according to ASUS, the BTF means back to future, not back to the future. Very important distinction, and a legal one. So back to future motherboards, they say, are for a new era for all PC DIY gamers. No one else, just gamers, and only those who PC DIY. So anyway, Universal's trademark notwithstanding, the Back to Future motherboards are similar in approach to what Gigabyte did with its Project Stealth previously, except it had a whole collection of parts meant to work together for gigabytes. ASUS's new board is just that. It's a board. There's no supporting case to go with it. As far as we can find, the only mention of a case at all is a caveat reading, quote, "This motherboard is compatible with specific case models." Thanks, ASUS, that is super unhelpful, considering you don't go on to specify the case models. Maybe it's changed by the time this video goes up, but this thing is like, it's publicly listed right now. They say there are specific cases that work with it. There's no list of the specific cases. Maybe it's like, it's compatible with specific cases. Here's a list, blank, and then hopefully we'll add something to it in the future. This would work with something like a freestanding frame, something that's just basically almost like a, we have one actually, it's a girder case, I think is what they, or grider case, something like that. Bought it from AliExpress. It's basically a vertical test bench. It'd work on that, but we'd have to, we want to try it with a few cases we have to see if it works out. Anyway, looking at the board itself, you can see that the header for any kind of cable you'd need to plug into the board is on the back. That includes power, USB, fans, and front panel connectors. You'd still need to worry about the power cables for the graphics card and run those through the front, of course, but everything else flipped. This is an interesting idea for aesthetics, but honestly, if you dislike cables so much that you're willing to go to these lengths, you should probably consider whether you'd be happier with a case that you can't see inside of. There's still options for cases with solid side panels like the Fractal Define 7 or things like the SSUPD Mesh Room where your view inside is obscured by the mesh, but it is a cool idea. It just needs some support, obviously. So anyway, if you know of a case that this will work with, or of course when ASUS updates its site with hopefully a list of specific cases, we'll try and work on it and do something with it, because this is a direction that things could go. Seems unlikely unless it gets substantial pressure behind it from other manufacturers, but it's an interesting idea. All right, next one, leaks for an RTX 4060 that makes it appear to be normal sized. Hardware leaker Kitty Yuko on Twitter posted a couple photos of an alleged RTX 4060 or Ti. We're not really sure which it's supposed to be because the tweet says Ti, but the photo clearly doesn't. Regardless, if this is a real leak, it's notable for being an actual Founders Edition model, since the 4080-12 or 4070 Ti, actually they rebranded it, was a partner-only launch. So that would be different for this one. So overall, it looks pretty standard. The design follows the now typical NVIDIA Founders Edition design. It's got two fans, they're on opposing sides, and that would imply that the right side of the card is flow-through. The PCB is also likely very short. It doesn't extend down the card much more than the PCIe connector itself. And this is also evidenced by the power connector, which you can just barely see in the photo of the front. It's too difficult to tell whether the card is using 12-volt high power or a standard 6 or 8 pin, but at least we could see something. Now, it's tempting to call this small, as in comparison to the other 40 series behemoths, because it is small. But really, the alleged 4060 is in line with what used to be the norm only a couple of years ago. It's only 2 slots thick, so that's what used to be normal, and it doesn't extend above the top of the bracket by any meaningful amount. Now, it'll be interesting to see the price and the performance of a 4060. There will be something, clearly, because NVIDIA has left a massive gap in its price range, and the gap spans from $0, which we don't expect them to hit, to about $800, somewhere in there. So there's a big hole right now in the lineup. And the market definitely could use some current mid-range stuff other than continuing to sell old hardware. But anyway, people have been relying on the used market or the last gen options for a while now. The 4060 might come into that market, except the early rumors suggest a 700, 750, something like that price point. We'll see what plays out. It's not really worth exploring right now, but that would be very high for a 60 series card if so. Related to this, but not enough for its own story, Gigabyte has leaked the existence of both a 4070 card, that would be a 12 gigabyte, and a 4068 gigabyte card. So at this point, you have two separate leaks. They're basically confirming, corroborating the same thing. Video card spotted references to both products within the latest patch notes for Gigabyte's Control Center software, and it's about as close to confirmation for upcoming cards as you can get, given how tight NVIDIA is with its partners about things. although they are always the ones who end up leaking everything anyway. So outside of an announcement from NVIDIA itself, this is pretty much your announcement of those cards. Next one is a massive cell phone vulnerability. Newly published research by the Google Project Zero team has uncovered 18 different zero-day vulnerabilities in the Exynos modems commonly used in smartphones. We originally found this story by way of Louis Rossmann on his YouTube channel. He makes great content on tech security and right to repair. I watched this particular video when I was on the plane because I needed something where someone channeled the rage I felt from dealing with airlines all day. And Louis normally hits that mark pretty well. He's got a lot of rage and he's very good at channeling it. These vulnerabilities were discovered in late 2022 and early 2023 by the Project Zero team. This team has worked on a lot of other vulnerabilities we've covered in the past, including on Spectre and Meltdown ages ago at this point, but very critical ones. This specific vulnerability is classified as a internet to baseband remote code execution vulnerability. There are 4 that are of higher severity and then a lot of them that are of lower severity. So the 4 that are particularly dangerous are dangerous because you, in theory, only need to know the target's phone number. That's it. That's the way to get into the device. And ultimately, this leads to compromising the device with no user interaction whatsoever. So as far as security holes go, that's pretty bad. Now, Project Zero is actually currently withholding the full disclosure, which is sort of they've tweaked their usual policies for this one because it's so bad. And they noted that for the 4 most serious attacks, despite the fact that it's already past the team's 90-day disclosure period, they want to wait longer for those security vulnerabilities to get properly closed. So their official statement reads the following. Due to a very rare combination of the level of access these vulnerabilities provide and the speed with which we believe a reliable operational exploit could be crafted, we've decided to make a policy exception to delay disclosure for the 4 vulnerabilities that allow the internet to baseband remote code execution. Now, the part where they talk about the speed with which it could be crafted is concerning for sure, because it's one of those like, okay, do they have enough now to start figuring it out? I would assume probably not. If Project Zero thinks as much, they certainly know a lot more than anyone on our team here does. The team for Project Zero is experts. They've done awesome work. But the attacker has to be skilled enough to perform the attack at this point, to also build the attack, and then they would still need a target to attack specifically. So the other 14 vulnerabilities, they're not as severe because they require either physical access to the device, and anytime that's a requirement, you're in pretty safe shape overall, because if someone has physical access to your device, you're pretty screwed anyway. There's a lot of other stuff they could do at that point, because they're either in the location where the device is housed, or you're like incapacitated or something. So that's not as concerning unless you just like lose it, and most likely if you lose it, it's just going to get hawked on Craigslist or whatever anyway. But they need physical access, or it would require a malicious network operator. Network operators here being AT&T, Spectrum, Charter. Okay, well, they're a different kind of malicious, so it's okay. Probably. The list of affected devices is available in the article by Project Zero. It includes phones like the Samsung A53. The exception here would be Pixel devices, which have already received an update addressing the worst of the flaws. If your device is on the list or uses the named Exynos chipset, you do have a workaround for the time being. If you turn off Wi-Fi calling and voice over LTE, you should be safe until patches are released. This is where updating your phone OS will actually be important, but it only goes back to the Pixel 6, Pixel 7 are listed as vulnerable for Google devices, and obviously Samsung devices that use the modem as well. As a crazy last point to this story, the Pixel phones, which Google makes, were not able to get a patch in place before the disclosure of this exploit, which was disclosed by Google. So if you needed more proof, and we really didn't, that Google Team 1 and Google Team 2 are right-hand and left-hand, really don't know what the other one's doing, this is pretty good proof. They are completely isolated teams, and I'm sure there was internal communication between them, but we would hope so anyway, but either way, they haven't been able to put out a patch yet for this vulnerability, which is probably part of the delay on the full disclosure. So Google removed the VoLTE, voice over LTE toggle recently in one of the settings updates, and that needs to be back in order to do the workaround for protection for now on this. So anyway, it's Google. They're doing what Google does. So if you have one of these devices, make sure you stay on top of the updates for security and follow the story as it continues to get resolutions put out because it's important for this particular vulnerability. Next one, time to touch glass with a Razer Atlas mousepad, apparently. So companies in the gaming space have always pushed the envelope on peripherals, but Razer has done it in a way where we go, okay, Razer's doing Razer stuff. In this case, maybe there's probably going to be a big enthusiast market for this type of stuff, but it does strike us as a little bit like the case side panels all become tempered glass trend, but then that actually became a thing that everyone wants now, including us. So maybe it's okay. What they're doing is making a big sheet of tempered glass as a mouse pad. Certainly the logistics of storing and shipping these will be a nightmare and will be priced into the product because it's $100. But Razer is not the first one to make a tempered glass mouse pad here. There's the SkyPad and the Pulsar, which are already on the market. The Atlas comes in either black or white. It measures 450 mil wide by 400 millimeters long and has a thickness of 5 millimeters. The bottom has a full coating of rubber to prevent it from moving on your desk. The top surface is etched to give it texture, so it's not like you're trying to drag your arm across flat glass. It also features an oleophobic coating to prevent buildup of skin oils on the surface. Even if it does get dirty, the nice part of glass is it should be the simplest possible thing to clean up. You should basically just need a damp cloth and that's it. Like other glass pads, of course, or other hard pads in general, like the older smooth aluminum style, which I actually used to really like before I moved to cloth pads. But like those, these are going to feel faster for a mouse movement than a cloth pad. There's a lot less surface drag, so that makes sense. Stopping the mouse in a precise manner might be more difficult, but the price is pretty steep. It's $100. It comes in a little bit higher than even high-end cloth options like Artisan, and being glass, the long-term durability should be pretty good, so it could theoretically last many years as long as it ships properly. Although we're looking forward to the first mouse pad exploding problem, because this is not specific to computer parts, but if you didn't know, tempered glass does have an exploding characteristic where it's got a name. Someone can remind me of the name in the comments, but there's a phenomenon where it'll just basically spontaneously kaboom. The good news is it's tempered. It's basically safety glass. So this happens with computer side panels every now and then. Occasionally we get tweets from people who are like, hey, my computer side panel exploded. I literally did nothing other than sit next to it. Is this normal? No, it's not normal, but yes, it does happen, and it's not special to computer parts. It happens to anything tempered glass, just because of how it's made, I guess. But anyway, that'll be particularly scary when it's a mouse pad. So this one, they say that as long as you don't drop it or beat someone with it, or stare at the sun, I don't know. The Razer icons on the website are really strange. But as long as you don't drop it, hit someone over the head with it, or start a fire, it should last a while, according to Razer. So there's your marketing page. Up next, Maxsun is launching the new Mega Gamer GPU. It's a video card with 5 fans on it. They have it in the 4070 Ti and the 4080 variants. And the overall aesthetic is a mixture between sort of like Zotac meets ASUS and a bunch of fans. They've blended curved lines of the outer shroud with a sort of edgy-looking cyberpunk-like detail on it and text. And the most fans we've seen on a modern card before this was 4 on the Galax Serious Gaming 4090. Yes, that is seriously its name, with its extra clip-on fan. 3 of the fans on the Maxsun Mega Gamer are in the usual position on the front of the card, but there are 2 more along the edge. The angle of the fan blades makes it look like they're set up to pull exhaust out of the fin stack at either end, blowing it straight into the case side panel if that's the case. Hopefully they don't spin too fast because fans this small get annoying very quickly. They typically have a higher pitched whine to them, but it depends on what speed they're spinning. There also needs to be some kind of wall or dam basically between the small fans and the large fans, because otherwise you're going to end up with a problem where some of the entering air just immediately exhausts without ever hitting the fin stack. Depends on how well they designed it. But it would be easy to obstruct the basically straight in and out loop that you would create otherwise. The fin stack itself looks dense with an ample cutout on the shroud to allow air to get out. Along the same edge is a detachable light bar of some kind. It might be a screen, but based on the connection points, it's probably just shining light through a cutout. And as a brief aside, while we were looking around the Maxsun site, we also saw this cool iCraft card. It's got a graffiti tagged backplate, has a purple shroud, and it's cool actually in the sense that it's different, which we liked about Yeston cards as well. So it would probably pair well with one of the ASRock Live mixer motherboards we covered in a previous news episode. And between all the cards we've looked at recently from Maxsun, Yeston, for example, it makes you realize that sort of the big company normal video card market is pretty boring because a lot of it is either just very plain black card. Sometimes they do black and red gamer, but now it's more black and LED gamer. Or they go for gamer transformer aesthetic for the most edgy possible version of a card that you'll get, at least in the West. So they're too afraid to take any risks or do anything really out there or fun a lot of times with cards from the big brands, but we've been trying to push them to go that way because it's really interesting when companies do it. Anyway, for the Maxsun card, we think it'd be interesting to look at. We're trying to work on getting one, so we'll keep you all posted. Next one, a leak of the AMD RX 6300. Apparently there was something worse than the 6400, and it's the 6300. This one comes from AMD, or more specifically Dell, via AMD, so it's as close to first-hand as you can get, and it's from the second-hand market. Hardware leaker 9550 Pro, pretty prolific with leaking hardware, posted on Twitter replying to a now hidden tweet, and that was from Komachi and Saka, who is another regular character in the leaks roundup stories that we post. And these two were discussing the existence of an RDNA 2 based RX 6300. We don't have access to the original leak, it's gone now, so we'll refer to the video cards article instead. The original poster uncovered a piece of Dell documentation for the 6300 that revealed the basic specs of an unannounced Radeon card. It allegedly only has 2 gigabytes of GDDR6 and has a core, or what they call an engine clock, of 1512 megahertz, very low, although RDNA 2. For power consumption, the card is rated at 32 watts, the lowest of anything we've tested anytime recently. It's basically APU levels of power. With those specs, it's clear it isn't meant for gaming, and it's more for getting display out of a system. Maybe you play Vampire Survivors or something like that, but not much that's intensive. Now, 9550 Pro's reply has a link to a Goofish page where someone was selling one, but the original is gone as well. That site is somewhat equivalent to Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace, except in China, and it's not uncommon for hardware to show up there early. The image shows a very small and simple low-profile card with a label that might say Radeon 6300 Potato HF, although we'd like it to say AF, but it's hard to tell. The heatsink is tiny, but it does have an active fan. It's not difficult to dissipate 32 watts though, so that's fine. Notably, the PCIe finger only has enough contacts to equal what looks like 4 lanes. This can pose problems when the lane count is so low and you pair a GPU with an older platform that runs an older PCIe revision, for example, like we explored with the 6500 XT, but in this case, that's irrelevant. You'd really have to limit yourself. I don't know, PCIe 1 or 2 or something, because the card is so low performing, it doesn't matter really. But if it's going to be only 4 lanes, it'd be nice if at least they just committed to it and made it a smaller PCIe by 4 size finger that way. If you wanted to run it a standard by 4 slot, you could. At least you could put something in one for once. EKWB has a price hike coming up. So EK Water Blocks, short and simple, they posted an update noting that their prices are going up for some of their products, and they wanted to explain why. We've been to a few water cooling factories in the past, like Bits Powers. We haven't been to EK's yet, but it is a very complicated process, involves a lot of machine time, and obviously tons of metals of typically high prices. So EK is expectedly naming the difficulty and price of sourcing materials as the main reason for the price hike. The news post doesn't say exactly which products will be affected, but the ones that are average roughly an 8% increase. All orders placed before March 31st will not be subject to the increase. So this is kind of their way of saying, hey, if you want it at the current prices, get it now. But this isn't a big surprise considering that the price of copper has generally risen since the second half of 2022. global markets have also been more volatile in the past year. We've also heard from manufacturing sources within the water cooling world that water cooling part manufacturing is becoming an increasingly tough business. Now, despite this, brands like Bikeski and Barrow have been able to keep their prices down. A lot of this is due to lower overhead and labor and support, and definitely due to cheaper logistics, because both of those companies are headquartered in Asia. Specifically, they basically all of their manufacturing, their supply, and their offices are in China. Bits Power, as another example, is in Taiwan. They do manufacturing in Taiwan. We've been to those factories much closer to the source of materials, and so even just logistics and shipping goes down a lot, not to mention the labor cost as well. So those are the big differences from EK. We, again, don't know exactly which products are affected, at least as of the time I'm filming this, but they're going to go up. It's honestly, this is more than most companies would do. Typically, you just increase the price when you have to, and that's the end of it. You don't really tell everyone, hey, we're going to increase the price. Sorry. So it's kind of nice they're doing that. Of course, they're trying to make a few sales in here as well before they do, but can't really blame them for that. Up next, ASUS and Noctua are combining forces to make an RTX 4080. I think this will be our last story for this week. So the card is over 2 slots wide with just the heatsink fins, and then there's some fans strapped to that. And then the Noctua NFA12 by 25, so they're the standard 25 millimeters depth fans, making it a very thick cooler and possibly one of the thickest ones that we've seen on a 4080. Now, Noctua has a black version of these fans, but ASUS and Noctua have decided to go the full beige approach. Even the box is brown, although, I mean, a lot of boxes are brown, but this one they can say is because of Noctua's branding. In addition to the fans themselves, this card has its own unique cooler design, and it's detailed on Noctua's accompanying page. Versus the design used on the tough variant, the cooler here is overall shorter. This is offset by substituting thicker 8mm heat pipes in place of some of the 6mm ones previously. Also, the tough has a solid copper cold plate. The Noctua edition, however, has a vapor chamber, similar to most of the 4090 designs in the market. Noctua claims that these changes result in a better relationship between noise and heat dissipation. Other than that, notable features on ASUS's side include a dual V-BIOS switch for 2 operational modes, 2 HDMI ports, and we wouldn't have paid much attention to the last one, but Patrick on our team has recently been lamenting the fact that most cards only have 1 HDMI out these days. So it's an interesting card. We'll try and look at it if we get time to go look at some more 4090s. But that's it for this one. Thanks for watching. As always, subscribe for more. Go to store.gamersnexus.net to grab one of our Modmats, either the large Volt, which is in stock and shipping now, or the original medium, and it helps us out, as always, with the work we're doing here. You can also go to patreon.com/gamersnexus. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more. We'll see you all next time.